So I wanted to bring this to people's attention for a while now because I feel like a lot of people just think that it's not a big deal or that they're actually not even aware of it. And I never really thought of making a YouTube video until my sister mentioned something and I was like, that was a really good idea actually. So I now have the chance, so I'm making this video. My name is Annie and I am visually impaired and extremely hearing impaired. I am completely deaf in both ears, but with the use of cochlear implants, I am able to hear almost to the same extent that people with normal hearing can. However, in certain situations, due to the fact that I hear a different way than people with normal hearing do, it's very hard for me to understand people. Situations such as if I'm talking to someone who has a beard, or a small child that has a very high voice, or someone who mumbles or talks very quietly, and especially with the face masks that we have all come to know in this past year or so due to COVID-19. It is a huge, huge struggle when it comes to face masks, as far as hearing. And also with eyesight. I am completely blind in my left eye, and I only have a tiny bit of vision in my right eye, about this much. And I know when it comes to face masks, people might think that it's all hearing because, it makes your voice muffled. But it also has a lot to do with eyesight. So I know me saying this makes wearing masks sound bad. Please wear your mask, because it is extremely important. For people who are high risk like me, wearing your mask could quite literally save our lives. So please wear your mask. But, however, since they do create problems with the blind and deaf community, I'm going to give you some things that you could do to help us out. I'm going to start with hearing, because I feel like it. So, with hearing, the masks make your voice a lot more muffled. And I know in situations when I'm trying to listen to people, I'm putting all my energy into trying to hear someone. And with someone who I know speaks at a normal pace, speaks loud enough for me to hear, they're not mumbling, with a mask, it's extremely hard for me to hear them. In most conversations, the majority of things people say, I have to have them repeat. So, one of the things you can do to help the deaf community out when you're wearing a mask is, I understand that when you are speaking, it feels like you are screaming so loudly, but to the other person, it's either too quiet or the perfect amount. To them, it doesn't sound like you're screaming. So even if it feels like you're yelling at the top of your lungs, please continue it, because it enhances the volume when you do that. And it makes life so much easier. Another thing you can do is repeat things if they ask you to. I know it can be annoying. I know for myself, I have friends who aren't deaf, but that I have to repeat things for them even. And it can get annoying, especially if you have to repeat it more than once. But please do it. It is so helpful. And please don't get aggravated, because that just makes us feel bad about something that is not in our control. Another thing you can do is speak at a slower pace. I know sometimes people speak very fast, and that can cause problems even without the masks. With me, my hearing, I don't hear through my ears, I hear through my cochlear implants. They sit on top of my head, but as far as the hearing process of it, nothing goes through my ear canal. So speaking at a slower pace allows me to comprehend what you are saying, and it gives me time to process it, and then I know what you're talking about. I know when I was younger, a lot of times I felt so bad about having to ask for someone to repeat something that I wouldn't ask, and I would just nod along. As for the blind aspect of things, you might think that it doesn't have a lot to do as far as masks, but it really does. Honestly, in my opinion, I think that being blind is more of a problem with masks than hearing. Because for me, my vision is a lot worse than my hearing. It may not seem like it to you because I'm completely deaf, but I'm not completely blind in both eyes. But I have 2 cochlear implants. Therefore, I can hear almost normally. It's different, but it's better than completely deaf. Whereas with my vision, I have such a limited eyesight that with masks, it is so hard for me to recognize people. I know even before the masks were a thing, it was extremely hard. If a friend came up to me in the hallway at school, if they weren't standing directly in front of me and I wasn't directly looking at them, half the time, and more than half the time, I wouldn't know who I was talking to, even if I've heard their voice so many times. So I know one of the biggest things that you can do when it comes to the blind community and masks, if you can see and you can recognize people even with masks on, one thing you can do is when you come up to someone, whether it's at school, work, the grocery store, a family reunion that you maybe should not be having, wherever it is, what you can do is walk up to the person, stay your distance, but walk up to the person and say, "Hi, so-and-so, it's me, blah, blah, blah." So for example, I know sometimes when teachers walk up to me at school, they'll be like, "Hi, Annie, it's Mrs. whatever." And to the other person, it may seem awkward for them saying it, but to me, it is not. For me, I don't like it when people point out me being blind and deaf. I like it when people make a huge deal about it in a situation that they shouldn't. So, but in this situation, when someone says, "Hi, Annie, it's blah, blah, blah," it is so helpful because it saves me the problem of having to say, like, I don't know who I'm talking to, who are you? Because that is extremely awkward. And I wouldn't even do that. I would just kind of play along and have a conversation with God knows who. So if you could do that, if you know the person and you recognize the person, just say, "Hi, whoever, it's me, Annie." Because it is so extremely helpful. And I promise you, to the other person, it is not awkward. Not at all. That is one of the biggest things that I know that helps me. I've only had a few people do it, but to the people who have done it, thank you. I know for people who aren't blind, that might also help because I feel like other people who aren't part of the blind community, who have normal eyesight, have this problem of recognizing people with masks on. Everybody looks the same. They literally look the same. If you have 2 people with glasses on and they both have black masks on, I don't know who they are. Like, for all I know, one could be my sister. So just say who you are and say the person's name so they know you're talking to them. Another thing, and this has to do with recognizing people, if someone who you know is blind or is visually impaired, or even if they're not, if they come up to you and they start talking to you and you don't know what they're talking about and they happen to say someone else's name, chances are they think you're someone else. So don't make a big deal about it and be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm not Sally," or whatever. But just say, "Oh, I think you have the wrong person," or they're over there. But don't point, because I know in my case, when someone says, "Oh, I think you have the wrong person," and they're like, "Oh, they're over there," and they point, I don't know where they're pointing to. So maybe you could walk them over to the person. Don't just like walk them over to the general area. Walk them over to the person and be like, "Here is Maggie. I think you were looking for her." But just do that. Don't make a big deal about, "Oh my gosh, I think you have the wrong person. That was really funny that you started talking about this and it wasn't even me." Because that's just really awkward for the other person, and then they feel bad about something that is not in their control. To you, someone who can see and hear perfectly, who doesn't really have any major underlying health conditions, The biggest problem of masks may be the annoyance of them. The fact that you have to put them on when you leave the house, the fact that you have to wear them at all, the fact that they're hard to breathe in. For people like me, who have a lot of underlying health conditions, who is part of the blind community and the deaf community, the biggest problem of masks is communicating with other people. It is so hard. So, if you would take these tips and use them, even if it's just once, it would help me, and I know so many other people out. So please, take into the consideration of me and the rest of the blind and deaf community. Wear your mask. It is important to everyone on this planet Earth right now. Anyways, okay, so I'm gonna put this at the end because that was kind of more on the serious note, and this is more on the funny part. I was trying not to laugh through that for some reason, so but thank you so much for watching. This means so much to me. I really hope you take into the consideration of all that. I know it would help us out so much. And stay safe, stay healthy, and peace out. That I just wouldn't ask, and I would just kind of nod along, and because to someone who is deaf, not knowing what the other person is talking about, as for the blind aspect of good God, as it doesn't make a huge difference as far as it's not awkward at all.